I never thought I'd be the guy to write something like this, but here I am. To give you some context, English isn't my first language. I married my wife 5 years ago, and since she's fluent, she often took the lead in social situations, ordering food, dealing with banks, even translating for me when her friends came over. At first, I was grateful, but over time, I started to feel small, like a child standing next to an adult. So, I made a decision I didn't tell anyone, not even her. I created my own secret plan to improve my English. Every morning before work, I'd wake up an hour earlier and listen to English podcasts, YouTube videos, and audiobooks. On my lunch breaks, instead of scrolling social media, I'd practice speaking under my breath, mimicking phrases. At night, I'd write little diary entries in English. It felt silly at first, but slowly, words started coming easier. Why the secrecy? Honestly, I was embarrassed. My wife had this way of laughing whenever I mispronounced things. Not in a cruel way, at least not at first, but it stung. I wanted to surprise her one day. I imagined us traveling, and I'd suddenly speak confidently in English to strangers, watching her jaw drop. That secret became a source of pride. It was mine alone, a private project that gave me a sense of control. But I had no idea it would eventually unravel into something much darker, exposing things in my marriage I wasn't ready to face. After about 6 months of this secret routine, I decided to test myself. I went to a cafe alone, ordered in English, and had a short conversation with the barista. Nothing complicated, just about the weather and the pastries, but I walked out of there like I'd just run a marathon. I felt unstoppable. That night, I almost told my wife. We were eating dinner, and she was scrolling on her phone while nodding at my stories from work. I wanted to blurt out, "Guess what? I had a full conversation in English today." But I held back. Something in me wanted to protect this secret a little longer. It was mine, my little rebellion, my quiet way of building myself up. But here's where it gets strange. A few days later, I overheard my wife on the phone with one of her friends. She laughed and said, "Oh, he'll never really get English. I've tried teaching him, but it just doesn't stick. He's too shy to talk to strangers anyway." It hit me like a punch to the chest. She had no idea I'd been out there practicing. No idea I'd been proving her wrong without even telling her. I felt angry, but also motivated. If anything, her words fueled me. I promised myself I'd keep going, but deep down, something cracked in me that night. That was the first moment I started questioning how she really saw me. One Saturday morning, I was sitting at the kitchen table, headphones in, practicing along with this podcast that focused on business English. My wife walked in, glanced at me, and smirked. "Practicing again?" "Cute," she said. I froze. My heart dropped. Practicing again? I never told her. Not once. I tried to play it cool. I shrugged and said, "Just listening to something." But inside, I was panicking. How did she know? Later that day, when she went to shower, I grabbed her laptop. I know it sounds wrong, but curiosity got the better of me. And that's when I found it. An open chat window with her best friend. They'd been talking about me. She'd been telling her friend that she secretly recorded me practicing English one night while I thought she was asleep. They even laughed about the way I mispronounced words, sending each other voice clips. I can't explain the feeling. My face burned with humiliation, like I was naked in public and everyone was pointing. But worse than the embarrassment was the betrayal. The one thing I was proud of, the secret I nurtured, was nothing more than entertainment for them. That night, I couldn't look at her the same. I wanted to scream, to confront her, to demand why she'd do that to me. But instead, I stayed quiet, because I didn't want her to know that I'd seen the messages. I told myself I needed time. But my heart, it already started pulling away from her. That night, lying in bed next to her, I felt like a stranger in my own home. She was scrolling on her phone, laughing softly at whatever she was reading, and all I could think about was those chat messages. Her and her friend mocking me like kids in a schoolyard. I didn't say a word. Instead, I made a decision, silently, without even realizing how big it would become. If my wife saw me as a joke, then fine. I'd stop trying to prove anything to her. My English journey wasn't about her anymore. It was about me. So I doubled down. I joined online forums, started talking to strangers over voice chat, even forced myself to make small talk with coworkers in English whenever I had the chance. Every mistake stung, but every success felt like a small victory. The funny thing is, the more I improved, the more my wife seemed to notice, and not in a supportive way. She started making little comments, like, "Oh, you think you're fluent now?" Or, "Careful, don't embarrass yourself in front of my friends." At first, I brushed it off. But eventually, I realized something uncomfortable. It wasn't just that she doubted me. It was like she didn't want me to succeed. Like my progress threatened her somehow. And that realization hit me harder than the betrayal itself. It finally happened one evening when we were out with her friends. We were at this restaurant, and the waiter was clearly more comfortable speaking English than our native language. Normally, my wife would jump in, but this time I spoke first. I ordered for both of us, even made a little joke with the waiter. He laughed, genuinely, and moved on. I felt proud. For once, I wasn't the quiet background character. But as soon as the waiter left, I saw her face. Tight smile, eyes sharp. Later, when we got home, she exploded. "Why would you do that? You embarrassed me," she snapped. I was stunned. "Embarrassed you?" He understood me perfectly. He even laughed. "Your accent is ridiculous," she shot back. "Do you think people are laughing with you?" Her words cut deeper than she realized. I stood there, silent, every bit of progress I'd made crumbling in that moment. But something inside me shifted too. I wasn't going to let her drag me down anymore. I told her, calmly, "I've been practicing for months. And whether you like it or not, I'm not stopping." She just stared at me, like I had become someone she didn't recognize. That was the first time I saw fear in her eyes, not of me, but of losing control. After that confrontation, the house felt different. She wasn't openly hostile, but there was this tension hanging in the air. I noticed she avoided speaking English around me, even though she used to mix it in all the time. Almost like she didn't want me to hear how natural it sounded from her lips anymore. One night, curiosity ate at me again. I know it's not proud husband behavior, but I went back to her laptop. And what I found hit me harder than before. She wasn't just mocking me with her best friend. She was messaging a guy she worked with, an expat from the UK. Their chats were littered with English, filled with inside jokes, wordplay, little things that stung because I knew I couldn't have kept up with them a year ago. And then I saw it. She had written, "He tries so hard, but he'll never sound like you. That's why I love talking to you. It feels easy, not forced." My chest tightened. It wasn't just about English anymore. It wasn't about accents or practice. It was about intimacy. She'd built a private world with this guy, one where my flaws became his charm. I shut the laptop slowly, my hands shaking. For the first time, I wondered if my secret plan to improve wasn't just about language anymore. Maybe it was about survival. The next morning, I couldn't look at her the same. She was cheerful, humming while making coffee, like nothing was wrong. Meanwhile, all I could hear in my head was that line. "That's why I love talking to you." Every word felt like a dagger. I tried to test her. Over breakfast, I casually asked about her coworker, the British guy. She barely blinked, just said, "Oh, he's funny. Helps me with reports sometimes." Too smooth. Too practiced. Inside, I was boiling. But instead of exploding, I swallowed it down. I went to work, shut myself in my office, and practiced English harder than ever. I forced myself into awkward conversations with colleagues, even volunteered to give a short presentation. I stumbled, my face burned with embarrassment, but I did it anyway. And you know what? The weirdest thing happened. My coworkers clapped. A couple even told me how impressed they were that I was improving so quickly. That encouragement, small as it was, felt more genuine than anything I'd gotten from my wife in months. On the way home, I caught my reflection in the subway window. For the first time in a long time, I didn't just see a man struggling with English. I saw a man waking up to the cracks in his marriage, cracks that had been there long before the language barrier. That night, I couldn't hold it in any longer. She was scrolling on her phone again, smiling at something, and I just blurted it out. "Are you in love with him?" She looked up, startled. "What are you talking about?" "The British guy? The one you keep chatting with." "Don't lie to me, I know." Her face drained of color, then twisted into anger. "You went through my things." That was her defense. Not denial. Not comfort. Just anger at being caught. I felt my hands trembling. "You mock me with your friends. You share my recordings. And now you tell another man that he's everything I'll never be? Do you even realize what that does to me?" For a second, she looked guilty, but it vanished fast. "You're overreacting. It's just jokes. just conversation. You're too sensitive. That word, sensitive, it broke something in me. All those months of hard work, of building myself up in secret, and to her it was nothing. Worse than nothing, it was weakness. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I just said, I won't be your punchline anymore. She stared at me like she didn't recognize who I was. Maybe she didn't, because for the first time, I actually believed myself. After that confrontation, the air in our apartment turned heavy and cold. We barely spoke, and when we did, it was short, sharp sentences. She still spent hours on her phone, laughing at messages I no longer needed to read to understand. So, I made a new secret plan. This time, it had nothing to do with English. I started researching job opportunities that required bilingual skills. I polished my resume, wrote cover letters, and even scheduled a few interviews in English-only environments. It terrified me, but each time I walked into those rooms and introduced myself confidently, I felt stronger. One evening, while she was out late at work, I sat at my desk and realized something strange. For the first time in years, I wasn't scared of being alone. The thought of leaving her didn't feel like a failure anymore. It felt like freedom. I didn't tell her. Not yet. Instead, I carried on with my plan quietly, just as I had with my English. She thought she still had control, but she had no idea I was building an escape route word by word, step by step. And deep down, I started to understand. Maybe this betrayal wasn't the end of me. Maybe it was the beginning. It happened faster than I expected. One of the companies I interviewed with offered me a position. Better pay, international clients, and a chance to use English every single day. When I told my wife, her reaction wasn't pride or happiness. She just raised an eyebrow and said, "Are you sure you can handle it?" That sentence should have crushed me months ago. Instead, it made me smile. "Yes," I said calmly. "I can." The first week at the new job was brutal. I stumbled over words, misheard colleagues, and left meetings with my head pounding. But each day, I improved. And each day, I felt less dependent on her. One night, I came home late from work, exhausted but proud. She was on the couch, phone in hand, chatting with her British coworker again. Normally, I would have gone silent, swallowing my anger. But this time, I walked past her without a word, sat at my desk, and kept working, drafting emails in English, preparing reports. For the first time, she was the one watching me, and I saw it in her eyes, discomfort, maybe even fear. She realized I didn't need her anymore. That was the night the power shifted. It didn't happen all at once, but I could feel it. The subtle changes first. She stopped laughing at my mistakes, stopped sending those snide little messages to her friends about me. She even tried to start conversations in English, awkwardly, as if testing me. One evening, she asked me to help her with a client email. I sat down, explained everything clearly, and for the first time, she didn't interrupt, didn't correct me, didn't smirk. She just watched in silence, and I could see the realization settling in. She no longer held the upper hand. The weirdest part? I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. Years of subtle control, betrayal, and manipulation had created a distance that no job, no English skill, no new confidence could fully close. I realized I had changed, maybe more than either of us expected. That night, lying in bed, she reached over and tried to hold my hand. I let her, but only halfway. I wasn't rejecting her, but I also wasn't hers anymore, not in the same way. I had my own life now, my own confidence, and my own secret victories that didn't depend on her approval. After a few weeks of this new dynamic, I started spending more time alone, thinking. I realized that my secret English plan had been more than a language exercise. It had been a lifeline. It had given me purpose, a way to rebuild confidence that she had chipped away at without even realizing it. I thought about the betrayal, the humiliation, and the long months of doubt. And I understood something important. I didn't just want to improve my English. I wanted to prove to myself that I mattered, that I could grow independently, that my worth wasn't tied to her approval. It hurt. It hurt to see her enjoy someone else's company more than mine, to know she had mocked my efforts. But it also taught me resilience. I started journaling, speaking aloud in English, pushing myself in ways I never had before. And strangely, the more I improved, the lighter I felt. I realized I didn't need her validation to succeed. I only needed to believe in myself. And that made me feel free. After months of tension, self-improvement, and quiet observation, I finally knew what I had to do. I loved her once, I really did. But love alone couldn't fix the trust that had been broken, or the constant undercurrent of belittlement that I'd tolerated for far too long. One evening, I sat her down and spoke clearly, calmly. I've changed. I've grown. But this marriage, it isn't healthy anymore. I need to move forward on my own. Her reaction was a mix of disbelief and anger. You're leaving me over English, she scoffed. I shook my head. No, I'm leaving because I finally see my own worth. And I can't stay somewhere I'm not respected. It was painful. It hurt to see the shock on her face, to feel the end of something that had once been my world. But it was also liberating. For the first time, I was making a choice entirely for myself, without guilt, without compromise. That night, I packed a small bag, moved in temporarily with a friend, and started the next chapter of my life. One where my voice, both literally and figuratively, finally mattered. Living alone for the first time in years was surreal. The apartment felt emptier, quieter, but in a good way. I had space to think, to practice English freely, to make mistakes without feeling judged. I even started joining online English conversation groups, making friends from different countries, laughing over mispronunciations, and finally feeling like I belonged somewhere. Work was thriving. My confidence grew each day as I handled clients in English, gave presentations, and even led small meetings. Strangers didn't see my flaws, they saw my abilities. And for the first time, I felt proud of myself, not because someone else noticed, but because I knew what I had accomplished. There were lonely nights, sure. Nights when I thought about her, about the life we could have had. But those were balanced by mornings of small victories, sending my first perfectly phrased email, understanding a joke in English without hesitation, laughing with a friend halfway across the world. And somewhere along the way, I realized something crucial. Betrayal doesn't have to destroy you. It can push you to find your own strength, to carve out a life that isn't defined by someone else's judgment. Looking back, I can see now that my secret English plan was never really about language. It was about reclaiming myself. The betrayal stung, yes. It hurt to realize that someone you love might secretly mock or undermine you. But it also became the catalyst for growth I didn't know I needed. I learned that your self-worth isn't determined by someone else's approval. It's built in the quiet moments. The hours you spend practicing, the mistakes you make and correct, the risks you take for yourself. I learned that independence doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you refuse to let anyone diminish your confidence or control your life. If I could give advice to anyone in a similar situation, it would be this. Invest in yourself, quietly if you must. Build skills, find your voice, and recognize your own value. Don't wait for someone else to validate you, and don't let betrayal define you. Use it. Let it push you to become stronger, smarter, and braver. Today, I speak English fluently, confidently, and proudly. I'm thriving at work. I'm independent. And while my marriage ended, I found something far more important, myself.